Hello, welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. With me, Chris. Today we will be discussing Deep Wizard by Diane Duane. It is the second book in the Young Wizard series. The first book, So You Want to Be a Wizard, I've already made a video about. So I'll be discussing this while drinking Blackberry Cider by Locusts. See if you can get that nice. There you go. Deep Wizardry. The first book in the series, So You Want to Be a Wizard, was following Nita and Kit as they both discovered they had wizard abilities, and they went into a dimension where they fought the evil one, the dark being, were able to basically solve the whole problem of him existing. They were able to convert him to the good side, kind of. While the sun went out, they accidentally brought him and his goons into our world where the sun went out and a bunch of taxis and feral taxis came and attacked people. Across this whole scenario, yada yada yada. Deep Wizardry happens very shortly thereafter. I believe we find out it's like 2 or 3 months after the ending of So You Want to Be a Wizard. Ita and Kit have become fast friends through the whole fact that they're both wizards. And so Nita's parents have taken in Kit along with them as they've gone to the beach for a week of vacation during the summer. Get there, they realize that they're needed because they're doing some magic by the ocean, and I believe a dolphin notices them and says, "We need your help." So Nita and Kit walk on water out. They figure out what's going on. They find a whale which is being attacked by sharks and has managed to beach itself on a reef in order to get protection from the shark. They're able to save the whale, distract the sharks long enough where the sharks lose interest, and all the blood is washed away. They heal the whale. At which point the whale says, "We need you back." And the next day, the whale explains, every so often, I believe it's around every 50 years or so, they need to do this ritual out in the ocean where they sing a song, and while doing this ritual, it has 12 people, and the wizardry of it basically keeps the Dark One trapped and held in, where the Lone One, the Lone Power, is bound at the bottom of the ocean. Story goes that the ocean didn't used to have death. There'd still be predation and that sort of thing, but it wasn't death in the way that we think of death, because none of these fish were worried about getting eaten, because when they were eaten, what happened was their life would continue, but now they'd just be part of the shark or whatever that ate them. But the Lone One entered into the water as a different whale, because the song is a whale song, and the Lone Power came in to deceive, and it told them, "Hey, I can give you this power," and basically, sort of like the Garden of Eden story, except instead of one whale, it's 10 whales, and they're all being convinced, "Hey, you should go and accept my deal." Some of them accepted, some of them did not accept, and some of them rejected. So there were 3 whales that accepted the offer right away. There were 3 that were unsure and didn't decide, and there were 3 that just went out and rejected. And then there's the shark, the king shark. So the one creature, the Pale Slayer or the Master Shark, they didn't have any power over when it came and tried to bring death into the water. And the only reason that the Lone One was bound was because another one, the Silent One, basically accepted the offer of death by dying. It said, "Okay, you want to bring death in here," and it died, and by dying and sacrificing itself, it then captured the Lone Power and bound it here at this moment to this one spot in the ocean. this is the spot where thousands of years the song is sung every year. So that's what's going on here. The whale that Kit and Nita saved is a young whale who's the senior wizard that she was working under had recently got killed by fishing boats. So then now he was going to be the one who was going to make this song happen, the Song of the 12. But he's no longer able to because he's dead. So she's thrown in this position, and she needs to go and get all the people and get everyone, lined up. But they can't find anyone to play the role of silent singer. So Nita says, yeah, no problem. I can help with this. So then they go back to land, and they come back. They do this a couple of times as they go, and they meet the different characters, including the Pale Slayer, who is a giant shark. I think they say he's like over 100 feet long, who can eat whales, in 1 or 2 bites. Like, he's a big guy. They meet some other whales, all sorts of exciting shenanigans. Get back on land. They realize that time flows differently when they are in the form of whales under the ocean versus when they are humans on land. So every time they're out there, time moves way faster, and they think they're, doing a couple of things, but really a long period of time's happened. So the first night, not a big deal. Their parents are like, hey, you need to come back. And Nita's mother is like, is anything happening between you two? And she's like, you mean, are we having sex? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, no, we're not doing that. That's crazy, Mom. And so they're disappearing for long periods of time. And this is the first friend that Nita's had. And it's a boy. So obviously that's where the mother's mind goes. And then, so that happens one night. And then the next night, they go back in the ocean as whales. They go out to do more of the things, getting ready. And as they come back, and they're Nita's parents and sister are searching for them on the beach. As Nita comes back on land, she gets close. Just as she's about to beach herself, she then transforms, and she comes up on the land, and her sister sees her transform from a whale into but she's naked, because to transform you gotta be naked. So her sister sees that, and then she sees Kit, who's also naked, who then teleports away, grabs their bathing suits, comes back, they put clothes on, and then her sister comes and says, hey, look, I found them. They came over the dune. They're obviously, parents very upset. Why this keeps happening. You need to stop doing that. So they get grounded the following day. So the following morning, when they need to go out, they use magic to walk through walls. They're locked in. Everything's locked. Yet they manage to walk out. Obviously, parents are pissed. So Nita's sister, Doreen, now knows that they are wizards. And so the following night, in order to have it all make sense and to explain everything, Nita and Kit tell Nita's parents, hey, we're wizards. Obviously, they're like, hey, I know you're in trouble for sneaking out, but you don't need to lie to us. So to prove to them, they go and they do all sorts of crazy things. Kit levitates, then teleports, and then they teleport them to the moon. And when they get to the moon, they get a moon rock, and they teleport them back. This finally lets her parents understand, hey, we actually are wizards, and what we're doing here is important. They explain the whole situation. So they are now allowed to go out and spend the few days that they will need in order to perform this song. Around this point, Nita realizes, while talking to the lone slayer, that the Pale Slayer, the giant shark, thought that she thought was symbolic, where she was singing and then playing the role of the silent singer. She thought it was symbolic. It's not symbolic. She has to actually go, and every time they perform the song, the silent singer sacrifices themselves in order to keep the lone power trapped and bound. And she's coming to acceptance with this and realizing, since she already, at this point, had pledged and sung the song which said, hey, I am giving up I am doing this. I'm perfectly okay with this. I am saying I'm going to sing the song. It's too late for her to back out. And if she backed out, then the whole song would fail. And the last time the song failed, Atlantis sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Atlantis was a real place, and it sunk to the bottom of the ocean because the song failed last time. So now she's figuring out if she doesn't go through with it, because she signed up for it, she would probably kill tens of millions of people. She'd be fine, but she'd lose all her wizarding powers. So her and Kit and all the whales and the Master Shark, the Lone Slayer, the Pale Slayer, are working their way, swimming down to the bottom of the ocean floor in the deep trench in order to find the bit of land where the lone power is bound in order to perform the song. As they do so, a bunch of krakens come up and attack. 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, they all go. All the sharks go and attack. All the krakens, the giant squids, come and attack, and they are able to be fought off. An earthquake happens. Nita is able to go and protect one of the other whales who was there performing by casting a shield, and she's so strong she's able to hold it off for a while, and she doesn't think she's strong enough to do it, but she is. They get to the bottom of the sea and they start to sing. At which point, Nita realizes there's only 11 of us. There's the 9 who re-accept, 3 aren't sure, and 3 refuse. There's the silent singer, which is Nita. There's the Pale Slayer, which is the giant shark. But this is the song of the 12. Where's the 12th? And then she realizes the 12th is the lone power who is there, who every time anyone else sings, saying, oh, hey, we're going to accept or we're going to reject whatever offer this lone power is offering. The lone powers is actually singing and offering these powers and this ability to these people. Still trying to say, hey, maybe I'll be able to go and to get things the way I want it to happen. It is recreating everything down to a T. Except one of the whales, who we learned earlier, her calf was fished up, and she's playing one of the parts of one of the whales who is supposed to be not neither accepting nor rejecting, but not unsure of what to do. She accepts the lone power's ability, which then allows all sorts of crazy things to happen. And so while they're trying to perform this song, a bunch more giant squid come and attack. And then she starts attacking everyone. Kit, who is a bystander, comes in, finishes her part so it can continue on. And then the only person who's left to sing, basically, is Nita, who is supposed to be, who is the silent one, who then goes and offers herself up. She's trying to do it, she gets stopped. She tries to do it, she gets stopped. At which point, the Pale Slayer, this giant master shark, comes and says, even though he's not a wizard, unlike the other whales who are performing it, he says, give me your power to Nita. Nita, trusting him, uses a spell which gives all of her magical abilities and magical power over to the shark. He then takes up Nita's part, giving himself as the sacrifice and using her power to bring sharks from all over the world, because he's the master shark, so that he sacrifices himself and all of the other sharks eat. Sacrifice is complete because another person has come in and taken her role, has taken the role, the song is sung, and the lone power is trapped. At which point, everything seems good. They are swimming back out, and looking up in astonishment, blah, 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 blah. Don't start there. The passing shape didn't turn, didn't pause. Nita just got a glance of black eyes, the only dark things in all this place. Yet even they burned. A fire behind that opaque look could mean anything. Nita knew what it meant. And on he went out of sight in unhurried grace, the true dark angel, the unfallen destroyer, Pale Slayer who never really dies, seeking for pain to end. So what happened here? This is an interesting story, but there really is not, I don't want to say there's not an antagonist. There is an antagonist. But he doesn't play the role of an antagonist like they normally do. It's more of her struggling with herself, with the knowledge of who she is and her family, and then the knowledge that she has accepted a role that she is unwilling to do, and then having to recognize, hey, if you say you're going to do it, you have to do it. And what exactly does that? It's an interesting structure. I mean, it still has the whole, beginning, middle, and end. There's the climax. There's the interesting, twist at the end. All that stuff. But they're not constantly fighting and arguing with whatever it is. It's her fighting with herself the whole time, which I think is. I've seen the memes where they go and they chart things out, man versus nature, man versus beast or whatever, and then it changes to man versus man, man versus society, man versus God, and there's all the different things of changing throughout time. And this is need to just argue. It feels like she's wrestling with herself throughout most of this, with her own decisions, with accepting who she is and whether or not she tells her family. Another thing, so reading these books decades afterwards, I knew there were 6 books in the series. So I've sort of figured, I'm sure someone reading it the first time too would have figured out, she's not actually going to die. She sacrificed herself, she set that role up, and none of the outcomes that they laid out, that she died, or if she doesn't die, then she has to give up her wizarding powers and horrible things are going to happen. You sort of figured neither of those options were going to happen. So I was trying to figure out what was going to happen and who was going to come in to sacrifice themselves. I find it kind of interesting that the person who sacrificed themselves was the person who death had no power over. Death, when it came into the ocean, had power over everything and everyone. Yet the one person here who had the power to kill the shark, the master of his domain, the master of other sharks, the old shark, who they realized played this role since the song began. He played the same role, being the Pale Slayer. All the other roles were changed throughout as different whales came and died. But this person didn't. Death has no power over the Pale Slayer, the shark. And since death has no power over him, he can go and sacrifice himself and die. And when he does, he doesn't die because death can't kill him. Now, if you watch my other videos, you know what's going to come here. It is surprising to me how many of these books have all these Christian elements. This is the story of Christ. It has different... The characters are sort of confused a little bit, but the general Christian story, that things were the way they were, things were good, then death came, people had a choice, they chose wrongly, allowed death into the world. Sacrifices had to be made until someone sacrificed themselves, and this person was someone who death, despite thinking they had power over, had no power over, therefore their sacrifice counted as a sacrifice, but also was unable to work, because the sacrifice did not sacrifice a goat, the goat's dead. If you sacrifice a lamb, the lamb's dead. If you sacrifice the shark that death has no power over, the ultimate shark, the master of his domain, he's going to come back. In the same way, if you sacrifice Jesus, who is God, who is the creator of life, you try to go and kill him, it's not going to work. But she was willing. Nita was, at the end, she was willing to sacrifice herself because she realized the greater good was for it, to be the sacrifice. She was willing to be killed for the greater good, which is not exactly a Christian story, but it's the story of goodness throughout time, of people giving of themselves, which comes back to Joseph Campbell and C.S. Lewis, the master myth. All myths point back to the one myth, right? That idea, all these myths point back. Being willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater. There is no love greater than this. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next book. There is the first, I believe it's the first chapter, or part of the first chapter of the 3rd book at the end of here. And it shows Dareen, Nita's younger sister, who wants to become a wizard because her sister is, but is not accepting all of the responsibility that comes with it. And that's all you really get from the chapter. She becomes a wizard, but doesn't accept it in the same way that Nita or Kit does. So all sorts of crazy shenanigans are going to happen. Maybe that'll happen in the 3rd book. Maybe it'll take a few more books for that all to come out. It's a good series. I'm going to keep on reading it. The connections with Harry Potter sort of get limited at this point. We shall see. Bonus book, bonus reading. In a previous book haul video, it was suggested that I read Hawk and Fisher. Hawk and Fisher by Simon Green. Hawk and Fisher is a buddy cop novel set in, I'd probably say, medium fantasy book. It's not high fantasy. And I think the book is pretty crap. I'm very disappointed in this. I was very excited to read it. It is basically a murder mystery, except, spoiler alert for anyone who cares, you really shouldn't. You should not read this book. Instead of there being one murderer, there's two. One person is a murderer, and the other person is a werewolf who can't control themselves. And they became a werewolf because their son became a werewolf, so they just wanted to hunt down werewolves, and while doing so, accidentally became a werewolf and killed people. There are a lot of issues with this. First off, it is pretty dark. It starts off with, so you go and you hear about Hawk and Fisher. They are a married cop duo who are apparently the best cops in the city, except they don't follow the rules, and by not following the rules, they do a raid on a place that has kidnapped children who are then used as sex slaves, and because they don't follow the rules, the people who run it escape. So because they want so bad to capture these people, they do it in such a way that it goes off, and they aren't able to capture the people. And you're wondering, why the heck is this at the beginning of this book, showing why these great cops are doing such a horrible job, only to realize that the murderer is changed his name, and he came from a family that did that sort of thing back when it was acceptable, and now it's not acceptable, but he's so ruined by the trauma that they've done on him that he has no choice but to do that. It's dark, not in a good way. None of the stuff has any payoff. The murder mystery, I sort of figured out pretty easily. It's a murder mystery, but then it goes in and you get things from the other people's perspective. And as soon as you get things from the other people's perspective and you get the perspective of the people who are the murderers, you realize they're the murderers right away. But it keeps on going as if there's some sort of I believe it's the fourth book in this series, and it's written by Simon Green and someone else. So I may read that and see what happens. Because maybe the other person actually is a better writer. I really enjoy the concept, but the execution was just off. Alrighty. Thank you for watching my video. Make sure to give it a like and subscribe.